fiat it doesn't have that deep notion of truth behind it. It's more of a tool used to control people, a tool used to bring people down and to kind of sap their energy and their time. Whereas Bitcoin actually gives you more time and more energy to do other things. It's a sound money, it's a hard money, it's something that's actually pushes you into a deeper level within yourself. It kind of like raises that conscious awareness within a person, that spiritual discipline that gets them to that next level. So I think it's just something just so beautiful.
Today, I'm excited to welcome Alpha to the podcast. Alpha is a thought innovator igniting souls to manifest universal power and a Bitcoin maxi. Welcome to the Bitcoin Edge, Alpha.
Hello, how you doing, Miss Paula?
Great to see you. Well, as we were chatting before, you have a really deep X tagline. But before we get there, tell us a little bit about yourself and your Bitcoin journey.
All right, so I basically how I got into Bitcoin was basically around the COVID era. I just kind of saw how everything was basically kind of like consolidating within the hands of the government. And I also saw like how mandates and how all of those different aspects were kind of going around against the power of the people. What basically had gotten me into Bitcoin was the fact of I kind of saw it as like an outlet to kind of express myself and find a community of other people, and also like the freedom and the sovereignty of behind it, that freedom of decision making, and the fact that I can kind of control my own financial power. That's basically the biggest reason why I kind of got into the whole Bitcoin scene. So basically, I'm like class of 2019 and all around that. And also some other things about Bitcoin, the fact of like, how it's immutable, how it's scarce, how it kind of has this feel behind it that's kind of really deeper than the price. It's very something that's I feel like is a very strong pull that brought me into this whole space, and I think it's so beautiful, and like the community around it, the people around it, they're all so nice and so uplifting, and it kind of just lifts vibrations and energy, really.
Yeah, it really does. There's something about Bitcoin and it's why I like to dive into the spiritual aspect of Bitcoin a little bit more.
Yes, let's get into it.
On your tagline, you mention manifesting. So what do you think the role of manifesting plays in shaping our reality? And how does that relate to Bitcoin?
I think manifesting is probably the it's the core of how we create things, really. And manifesting is really a process that's kind of overarching, and how we kind of bring our thoughts into reality. And in terms of Bitcoin, I think it's one of the strongest manifestations that's came in the past, I would say, ever, really. In terms of how money is exchanged, fiat it doesn't really have that level of that deep notion of truth behind it. It's more of a tool used to control people, a tool used to bring people down and to kind of sap their energy and their time. Whereas Bitcoin actually gives you more time and more energy to do other things. So it's definitely a different aspect to Bitcoin than it is with any other type of money. It's a sound money, it's a hard money, it's something that's actually pushes you into a deeper level within yourself. It kind of like raises that conscious awareness within a person, that spiritual discipline that gets them to that next level. So I think it's just something just so beautiful to just study, to use, and to have.
Yeah. Did you study personal development before finding Bitcoin? And what are some of the principles that you like and some of the people that have really stood out to you?
I actually had studied more into like ancient texts and religious books and religious principles and stuff like that. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily religious, but I kind of have a very deep intuitive sense for how that stuff kind of connects with different things, and I saw a lot of connections between that aspect and Bitcoin. And like when I started like trying to push that, basically trying to communicate and trying to like bring all those things together, I kind of saw how it connected across different spaces and different things. And some ancient texts that I've looked into and kind of saw that kind of connected back to like the Bitcoin space is things that kind of like are esoteric. And in a way, it's not just because I read a lot of books, like, like there's like the big nice books, like, the things like Safety Amos wrote, and things like Lawrence Lepard, The Big Print, The Bitcoin Standard, The Bitcoin Bible by Antonio. Those are pretty good books. But even going back on to things like the Lesser Key of Solomon, the Emerald Text tablets, and also books like the Ars Magica, or these are a lot of these books are kind of like they're written by, they're not English books, they're like German books and Latin books and things like that. All of these books kind of point towards kind of like the same source material, if that makes any sense, like things that we kind of seen in the world of like how the real world works, but it's not really described in like science or anything like that. Like, because basically the way I like to describe it is kind of like science is the least of what we know about the world. It's all the knowledge that we can kind of prove and like know what's truth. But the things that are unknown, that are beyond it, that cannot be like, necessarily described, those are the things that I'm like been trying to understand and trying to grasp, because that's kind of like where the real world is. It's like the real world is not really based in just science and in just what we know, but it's also, has that element of chaos, that element of the unknown, the element of the void. Like those things is like what I've been trying to like get towards and trying to get people to kind of understand around the community. And it's like it's complicated, to say the least, to say the least.
It sure is. And we're going to delve into it a little bit. But why do you think money, and particularly sound money, is so important to humans?
It's really important to humans because it's something that really comes back to our free will. And our free will is something that's inherent within the spirit. It's what gives us our individuality. It's what keeps us kind of separated from each other and makes us have our own kind of decision making skills, irrelevant of what the other person is saying. So like the sound money aspect of it is kind of like a method of expressing ourselves. And I think that's really the very base of it, and the very core of why we are so adamant about pushing Bitcoin forward, is because it gives us that level of sovereignty, that level of free will, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Money is a way of expressing ourselves. And another thing, it's also a way of storing our value, right? Because you and I work for money. And for some of us, we like to store that value for the future. And unfortunately, as you and I realized during COVID, that it was getting printed quite a lot. And when you print money, the value goes down and doesn't store our value. But now we found a vehicle, Bitcoin, that can store value for a longer period of time.
Yes. And it goes back to that, it goes back to actually the gold standard, and Richard Nixon in the 1970s, when he took us off of the gold standard, and the fact that the bankings had new how they basically operated, and how they create money through something called fractional reserve banking, which they only have to keep like 10% of the money in their banks, and they can lend out that other 90% away, which allows them to inject money in the system, creating like endless feedback loops. And the fact that the Federal Reserve can also print money endlessly, it's like all of those things can kind of goes into this aspect of spending infinitely, and infinitely creating that debt that is unsustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. You talk about igniting the souls and to manifest the desired outcome. Is that what you do with your community and the Bitcoin community?
Yes, that is actually the main point of my the community that I created, called Conscienza. It's Latin for consciousness. It's a community that's built around trying to raise other people's awareness and trying to get people to understand themselves really. And that's my mission, and that's the reason that I do this, is to try to get people to heighten their awareness and to build themselves up so that we can kind of connect back to that higher power.
That's beautiful. Do you find that people in your life are receptive to Bitcoin? We all know on Twitter and X, we all are like in a, what do they call it? An echo chamber.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, okay, yes, it's kind of an echo chamber. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that point of view. In terms of real life, it's definitely a lot harder because of how people are in this world, how we operate with fiat. You know, fiat is basically everything that we use. How we can basically operate in the world, and Bitcoin really hasn't seen that level of adoption yet, so it's kind of hard to really convince people. Like I have been able to orange pill a couple of people, but it's not to the level that I would find acceptable yet, because it's just, it's just not there in terms of the general public and the masses in their conscious space, how they're thinking about it. Their thought process is basically paycheck to paycheck. How am I going to, afford groceries? How can I, make sure that my children are doing right, and stuff like that. And they're not really thinking about how Bitcoin, the idea behind Bitcoin and how it operates. I like to say it like this: you can kind of take a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Yeah. It's high time preference thinking. And
Yeah.
many of us Bitcoiners start having low time preference thinking because of the study and what we grow and learn in the Bitcoin space. But why do you think more people don't or aren't interested? Do you think they don't see the problem? Do you think that because we've always have fiat, they just expect that we are always going to have fiat and it's a bit of conditioning?
I think that they don't understand how it can solve their problems. It really comes back to that level of human realization, in terms of like it really has to come from within. It has to come from their own willingness to learn and their own willingness to do their own education into how Bitcoin can save their lives. You could really give them all the information in the world. You can give them all the education in the world, but they have to have that own inner willingness in order to kind of drive them towards that conscious awareness. And it also, it really comes back to like the whole aspect of our own survival. We're kind of like built to kind of, by the media and by different aspects within the world, in our own environment, to live like in a survivalist mindset, that where we're living paycheck to paycheck, and where we're living in this aspect of how can I solve the problem in front of me rather than the problem that I'm facing as a whole. I think it's sad, really, that people aren't looking into Bitcoin enough, because once it really starts popping up, it's going to be too late.
Yeah. And that's where the price does help. It helps many people get in, right? We
Yeah.
talked about that we don't focus so much on the price, but it does get people into the space. And then sometimes you have to learn a hard lesson. But did that get you into Bitcoin in the beginning? And did you have an altcoin journey or all Bitcoin?
So I didn't have the same altcoin journey as most other people. I know I've seen a lot of people, they kind of came in like on like different other altcoins and then kind of settled on Bitcoin. I actually found Bitcoin first. And I think that was awesome for me, because was able to kind of get to the truth almost immediately, and I kind of see how that operates in terms of how I was kind of initially exposed to it. I think that in terms of how all altcoins operate, they operate in a completely different way than Bitcoin does. And the main aspect that I think is different is like the decentralization aspect of Bitcoin, and how it's more community driven than it is like, around like a center base, like kind of like how XRP is, and like how things like Trump coin and Dogecoin and all these meme coins and stuff. Like, I really like to call them, and if you want to excuse my language, I like to call them all shit coins, because that's really what they are, shit coins.
Yeah. On X, you do talk a little bit about stacking sats, unbanking yourself, and self storage. So those are all important to you.
Yes. Cold storage, I think that's the best way that we can place our Bitcoin is in our own hands. If you don't hold your keys, you're not really owning Bitcoin. And I also think that on another aspect of it too, how to gather the Bitcoin, the best way to do it is to DCA, dollar cost averaging, making sure that you have a specific percentage amount that you're setting away every month or daily or whatever that you just don't have to think about, because that's the best way. Because I always say this, I say this to everybody, I say that your consistency will build your frequency, and then that frequency will compound.
That's a great saying. Did you come up with that?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
I love it. Great. You mentioned on X that Bitcoin is a living mirror of a consciousness encoded in a protocol. That proof of work is a spiritual law.
Yes, yes.
Dig into this a little bit.
Okay, so if you really want to break it down, and if you want to get into it, the Bitcoin as a spiritual law is based within the network in terms of how the blockchain operates. It's kind of like something that's indivisible, or something that is immutable. It's just something that can't is not going to be changed as it's on the ledger. So it's like a law that you can see as it goes down, and as you refer back to it, it stays the same, and it never changes. And that's basically how a law operates in that aspect. And spiritually, it's kind of encoded as like a thought. Because if you think about it like how exchanges happen, it's kind of like a thought exchange and our processes between how two different minds are operating. The minds are the wallets, and then like as you exchange, you're exchanging thoughts between each ledger. And it's pretty cool how Bitcoin kind of reflects a kind of like a big consciousness system as a whole. And it's also cool how you can see that on other aspects in terms of like the proof of work, how it is repeatable, and it kind of goes back down the same thought processes, and it gets deeper, it gets stronger, and it kind of shows like a different aspect of that discipline, how we can kind of expand it. And as you expand that, you expand your consciousness. It all kind of goes into each other. It's all fractal, it's all reflective, like a big mirror. So cool. It's so cool.
That is cool. So I've heard that, now we are into the 16th year of Bitcoin and we get stronger, like you mentioned. Bitcoin gets stronger the longer it goes without being hacked, which it never has. And so what you are saying that as the network gets stronger, we go deeper, and the same that we see in the spiritual world.
Yes, yes. It's and I like to think of it like you said, like a mirror in that aspect, because it's that's kind of like how we operate in terms of the physical dimensions. They all kind of mirror each other in a reflective way. I kind of like think of it as like layers on top of each other. And if you think about it like that, you can kind of see how the spiritual world kind of affects the physical world in terms of that reflection of the mirror across the basis. So I think that as you can kind of observe that, you can kind of start seeing more connections as you look into the physical. So even with how we observe, I think that fiat also kind of is a mirror, but in a different direction. Instead of it mirroring from the above way, it mirrors from the downward side in terms of how it comes from a lower frequency. And I think that in that aspect of that lower frequency, it drains us. So it's like Bitcoin gives, fiat takes away. And when you kind of understand that on an aspect, it really shows that it's kind of a collapsing system. It's kind of something that's going to fail and is unsustainable. And I really try to get this and try to drill this down for a lot of people. I've been trying to drill this down with my family so much, because the debt is just going to keep rising. The reckless spending is just going to keep rising. And like we're just going to keep seeing more and more destruction come upon us as we use it. So I really want to like push this forward, because we need Bitcoin. We need people to understand that this vision, this idea, because it's not about the price. It's not about the price. It's about what we're heading towards, and how can we mitigate that. And I think that this is what Satoshi envisioned really for like how things were kind of going down. And it's weird because it didn't happen yet. It didn't happen when Bitcoin was created initially. It's kind of like an invention that kind of came from the future if you think about it. Um, like things like CBDC, like these central bank digital currencies. It's like those things weren't implemented yet until now, but we were kind of seeing that come across. Like Bitcoin was like here before that, so it's like, how did he know that? Like, how was he able to envision all of these things and all of these problems before they happened? Like, is Satoshi like a time traveler, or is like Satoshi like some type of wizard or mystic or something? And it's like, I know it's like I'm kind of like using like these fictional terms, but I'm just saying it from like an aspect of, he was really like a visionary, and he really saw something that not many people could see, that was really ahead of his time, centuries ahead.
Absolutely. He was what we would call an old soul in one way. But, we are going quite deep on the spiritual side here. Most people don't go quite that deep, except some Bitcoiners do. And, regular people, that's another far stretch for them to go way into the spiritual side. But it Bitcoin creates a better world for everybody. I speak to many people from African countries, and then of course South American countries that have worse inflation than us in the US. Bitcoin can create a better world for the whole world. And to me, that's a spiritual aspect, because we're not just caring about ourselves. We want the whole world to have
Hmm.
this opportunity too.
Yeah, it comes back to that altruism. Like, yeah, Satoshi was definitely an altruist when it came to helping people. I mean, he gave us Bitcoin and walked away. That was probably the biggest and decision that he could have ever made, because I mean, we know like on the ledger, on the wallet, he has over a million Bitcoin, but I mean, he hasn't done anything with it since he left. And the thing is, it's like, that's that's something that I think was definitely a very, very good thing for society, because Bitcoin needed to be something that was decentralized. It needed to be for the people, and they need to put the power back into the people's hands, because money was built, is like being built as like a system of control. But like once you take away that control, then where does the power go? It goes back to the people.
Yeah. And on the fiat standard, people start losing hope. I've spoken to Seb Bunny, and he studies the psychology of it. In his book, which is The Hidden Cost of Money, it's a great book, but he talks a lot about how the fiat system erodes our capacity to be better human beings, because we're on the treadmill and we're so just trying to survive. And so few people see it. But that's why we're here chatting, because we want more people to see it and get different voices out there.
Yes, yes. Everybody needs to say something. Everybody needs to speak up, because the more people can visualize it, and the more that everybody can kind of come together and see it, the stronger that the vision will be, and the more solidified in the physical realm that vision will be. So I think that it's something that needs to be said, and you're doing a great justice and a great service for us. I really like, because I watch your podcast all the time. I'm gonna admit it. I'm going to admit it. I watch your podcast, and I love the conversations, and I love hearing different aspects and different people from around the world speaking about this, because this is what we need to do, and it's what we need to see.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. It's great to have the younger, crowd also watching. And I try to get millennials on, talking to one next week, and and you're the future, and you see it better than we see it. But I want to hear about it from all sides. And before we started, you mentioned that we're all thought innovators. And I thought that's quite profound. We really are. But what are our thoughts innovating? And do our thoughts innovate our reality? Do you believe that?
Yes, I actually, this is okay. When I see you're getting into a really deep subject here. So now, I think that if you really come back down to it and you actually like look at the soul and like what we are, like who are you? You're not really your body. You're not really your brain. You're not really just your thoughts. You're the awareness or the observation of how your thoughts rolled past your brain, because not all thoughts that you have are yours. And if you really want to get back into like the deepest aspect of it, there's other things and other entities that can kind of influence what you're thinking. And if you're really want to go into this aspect, there's things that want to see you fail. There's things that want to see you like to push you down and want to there's entities that are made to feed on your energy, and you have to fight those. You have to be able to innovate, and we have to be able to iterate on what you're thinking in order to build yourself to be a better person, to get to that desired outcome. That's why you need to have that conscious awareness, because if you don't, you're going to be a slave to your own patterns and to other people's will. And that's really what Bitcoin is about, is like giving you back that free will and that decision making and that aspect of how can I build to my own desired outcome, or what do I want for myself, uh, on that aspect. And so I like, when I think of like a thought innovator, I like, that's really like the one thing that we can change about ourselves, is like, what am I thinking about, and like how can I change that direction. um so it's a very very deep, very very deep subject, and it's kind of hard to kind of articulate. Not even physics has really articulated this, or not, no real theoretical physicist has really talked about like this real aspect, like as because there's really no real word for it, and we really don't understand how the things connect. Like where do you go when you dream, and like what are you really in that aspect? It's kind of hard to kind of place it, but I think that like when we come back to like what we are and what we're doing, that it comes back to that observation and that awareness. So that's what I'd be trying, that's what, like, build for people, trying to like raise those vibrations and that frequency of yourself, of who you are. And it's not that I want you to be an individual, but I want you to actually connect back to that aspect of your own divinity and your own divine power behind the thoughts and the physical and the spirit, all of it. Connect back to that source.
I love that. And I love how you bring it to Bitcoin as well. I think this is a missing part in the Bitcoin community. And I love this. I interviewed Jeff Booth, one of the first people, besides my friends. And on his website, he says, your thoughts create your reality. Let me try to get it right. So, your thoughts lead to your words lead to your actions, and your actions lead to your reality.
Yes, yeah, you're right. And let me help you break it down, because
Go
I've
ahead.
studied
Go
this
ahead.
really,
You, yeah.
I've studied this really deeply. So thoughts create reality. So let's get into that. If we break it down on like on a manifestation level, so it goes from from your thoughts to your actions, and how it goes like that. um, so the more thoughts you have, it kind of creates like a vibration, so if we're thinking about like this on a wave level and wave particles, how that aspect goes into it, you can kind of look this up in the double slit experiment in physics. If we're looking at this as a wave, you have a thought, it turns into a vibration, that vibration then moves into a frequency, that frequency is then compels you to act. And then that compelling of action creates the action, and then the action moves into reality. So this is the manifestation process across how it operates, in terms of like how I observe it, because I don't want to say like how it actually happens, because it could go a lot deeper than that. But this is how I kind of see it, is like the thoughts operate on a level of, they're like the closest thing to divinity, but they're also like the smallest form, in terms of like they're small and they're weak, but it gets stronger as the manifestation process goes along, and it goes through all of these different steps and these objectives, from the vibration to the frequency to the compelling to the action. So all of these things then come out into a reality in a more solidified form. So it goes from non-solidity and creation to solidity and determinism. So it's determined and it's defined.
And let's just make it practical. I'll tell you how it works in my life. For example, I believe it's funny. I I believe that happiness is a choice. In other words, if I focus on things that I'm grateful for more than I focus on too much of what's wrong in the world, I tend to be a happier person. And I have too studied it like you, so I know it goes deeper than that. But it actually does work. When I send out good energy, I tend to have good things happen in my life. So I don't even need to know all the details, but it's working for me because I've tried the alternative. I've tried being angry at the world, feeling like a victim, and that was a pretty sad place to be. So, how
Hmm.
do we bring this back to Bitcoin?
Well, okay, okay. It's actually what you're actually talking about is Eastern philosophy, and it's actually the root of karma. This is actually see, people think, okay, so like when people see karma, they just think it's like just this term that's, people just say, just like as like superstition or something like that, but it actually comes back to real things. It was actually describing a real process that happens, and this is goes back to how you're kind of speaking things into existence. And when you're speaking, you're actually releasing something called cymatic frequency. And the cymatic frequency that you're releasing is the thing that actually forms and shapes the universe. Because your voice and your vocal cords, that energy that is released, it literally releases energy that literally shapes your reality in that oscillation in those waves. So it's like if you're speaking those good tones and those good vibrations, then you're gonna get that good good energy coming back at you. And then the same thing with the negative way. It's just how frequency works. You got higher frequency, you get higher frequency things. You get lower frequency things. And this is kind of comes back to the aspect of I'm gonna bring it back to Bitcoin. Just give me a second. So basically, and this kind of comes back to like other spiritual entities and energy entities. These things are living things. Bitcoin, the idea, the energy behind Bitcoin, the energy that actually goes into Bitcoin is living energy. Like when we're mining it, we're not only using electricity and like computers and stuff like that, but we're also using thought energy and focus. And like the more focus that we put into it, the more that we get out of it. And like this focus energy that we're putting into it is what allows us to kind of get that proof of work. This is kind of why proof of work is so important, because it comes back to that defined aspect, the action, the physical action that comes out of your own manifestation process from your thoughts. You think about like, hey, I want a Bitcoin. And then the proof of work is the action, is the solidified form, the defined form of that manifestation. So when you're looking at that energy aspect of it, it's not just electricity, but it's also your mind.
Yeah, that's great. It's also about taking self-responsibility. So
Hmm.
I'm responsible for my thoughts. I'm also responsible for creating the life I want to see, studying Bitcoin. We talked earlier a little bit about numerology and the Queen of Cups, which you have on your taglines. What does numerology tell us about Bitcoin?
There's way more than we could discuss here. I'm just gonna say that there's 369 is very, very big numbers that has to deal with Bitcoin. 333, some other significance, reppy digits. When you see repeating numbers in Bitcoin, there's reasons for that.
We recently had the 888
Yes, yes,
set.
and that
Yeah.
kind of comes back to abundance and the infinity aspect of it. In terms of like numerology, it's more on the aspect of how you define it and how you determine how it affects your life. Because I really like to say that like numerology is not really based in a definite science, but it's more about how it affects your own consciousness and how your perspective on it is. So when we're talking about things that like numerology, like numbers that are repeating or numbers that you're seeing that within the Bitcoin, it's Bitcoin kind of talking to you and giving you signs and patterns for your life. So these are really things that you have to pay attention to. And I think the numerology behind it will give you different predictions. Like Josh Mandel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us
He's
about what you think
okay.
about his prediction. His number is 424.
Okay. Okay, so Josh Mandela, he's I think that he kind of came out of the woodworks for me, really, in terms of like how he made his prediction, and the fact that he was able to kind of, even before he was actually able to predict how the Bitcoin would drop to 80, 83 and stuff like that. I think he's a person to watch in terms of the numerology aspect of it. And I think that people need to really look into Josh Mandel if you want to get some really good insights into how Bitcoin is going to move. But also take what he says with a grain of salt, because he's speaking from his own perspective. Things that he says will come true for him, but not necessarily come true for you. So make sure that you're always doing your own research and your own due diligence on how that that whole aspect goes.
So, on that note, where do you think we are in the cycle? Do you focus on that at all?
Yes, yeah, I do. I actually do. So in terms of my own prediction, I've I've done my own research, and I've looked into, like, statistics. I've done technical analysis and other things like that. And I've been studying like the wave patterns of Bitcoin and things like that. And basically what it's telling me is that we're gonna basically see Bitcoin double, at least, like go up to at least 200,000 by the end of the year, at least. So whatever money that you can put into Bitcoin, you're gonna see something come out of it, at least for that, on that aspect, at least by the end of this year. Now, beyond that, I can't really tell you what's going to be going beyond that, but this is just in terms of my own analysis and what I've done on that. But I don't really want to get too much into like the price of it and the numbers of it too much, because I don't want to say like I'm an expert on that, because I mean I do invest. I'm a personal investor. I've invested for almost since 2019. So how long that's been? What, 6 years?
So, you were right before COVID. Did you got into it right before COVID?
Literally right around that time, like 2019-ish, 2020, like literally like that, like November-ish to like March
Okay.
is when I first invested in Bitcoin, and ever since then it's been working out for me. Let me just say that. So
I would say so. And anyway, we don't give financial advice, but
yes, yes,
it's always fun to look into what we think it's going to go to. I'm still a little bit shell shocked from the last cycle. So the cycle is different. Bitcoin has been chopping around, going down. There are a lot of people think that we're already at the top of the cycle. And if we are, that's okay, because you and I know that there is much more to this Bitcoin than the price going up. Of course, that would be nice and that brings people in, but there's no guarantees.
yeah, yeah, like I said, I always tell everybody to do their own due diligence and to do their own research. Really, that's the big thing, is that you need to educate yourself on Bitcoin, and you need to know what you're holding, because that vision is what we're trying to propagate, and we're trying to push it upwards. So the more people who understand it, the stronger it will be. And in terms of how Bitcoin has been going up and down, I always say, like, Bitcoin has crashed before and it will probably crash again. And I'm still going to be holding it, and I'm still going to be buying more, and I'm still going to be stacking, because that's what I do. I mean, I take my Bitcoin, buy it, I put it into cold storage, and I leave it. That's what I do.
Well, and that's exactly what we've been discussing, right? Many people see Bitcoin as just an asset. Besides what we've already talked about, what do you think they miss about its deeper universal impact?
The deepest thing that people miss is the fact that they look at the numbers when you should be looking at the education, really reading about it, reading all of the things that are around it, in terms of how it operates, how the network is, how the mining goes, in terms of the hash rate, how it is a proof of work, how it is a store of value. All of these things need to be studied. Reading books on it, like the Bitcoin Standard, the Bitcoin Bible, things like the Big Print, things like uh, Bitcoin 101. What else? There's so many Bitcoin books that you could read on this. You can write about this for days, but it's really like the economics behind around it in terms of how it operates. I think that's what most people miss, and if they really just did that aspect, they would really find that it's real. It's real.
A great point. That's probably one of the most important things is to get educated right before you invest in any asset. But yeah, this is more than just an asset. So, how has your life changed since adopting Bitcoin? How has Bitcoin changed you?
It made me really come out of my shell, really. I think that I wouldn't be able to even be on this podcast or talking to you if I wasn't invested in Bitcoin. I think that like it really pushed me and motivated me to kind of communicate with others and trying to get the vision out there to spread the mission, really. I think that's the biggest thing that Bitcoin changed about me.
So why did Bitcoin do that? Is it because now you wanted to connect with other people with like minds, or it's because you were bringing all of your information together and you wanted to share it?
This comes back to like I think Bitcoin is really like a living energy. I think that it kind of gave me signs and it really gave me like a vision. I don't know how to explain it.
So you felt it like a living energy. I mean, but did it give you hope maybe
No,
or
it was more like it spoke to me in terms of like I like felt a drive, I felt a passion, I felt a mission, I felt the community around it. Like all of that was like something that was it was such a different feeling that it really changed me at my core and made me want to like speak to others and want to come out of my shell and want to, come and talk to you and come and talk to anybody who wants to like get this mission across and to get the vision across. Like I'm motivated to repost content. I'm motivated to post more content. I always like, I'm always writing stuff about Bitcoin. I'm always finding new things about Bitcoin that I haven't seen before. Like all of these things, like I feel like I would never have even batted an eye about if I didn't know about Bitcoin, you know? So it's just something that I'm really passionate about.
well, I'm really glad it did because I think you have a really important voice in this space and I really appreciate you talking to me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for talking to me. I think this is the most beautiful thing here. It's just something that I really I really just love. So thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for how you are doing your podcast. And I'm going to be watching more and I'm going to be keeping up.
Thank you. And I'll post a link to your Twitter below is or your X below. Is there anything else? Anywhere else people can find you?
This is the main spot. No, this is it. This is what I want to everybody to see me as.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.